Okay. Okay, good morning, good evening. Here's CHE210 Nutrition, our final live uh, WebEx optional course. It is recorded for those who can't make it and want to review it at a later time. Um, and so welcome to those joining live right now. Let me see here. Show our screen. Okay. All right, we are winding down the course right now. The last four chapters that I hope you're enjoying, get a lot out of. This is exam 5 coming up, and it will be during well, starting this week, going into the exam week next week. But it will be open tomorrow, Friday, the 9th, and be open till like I said, the 12th. So up until then, because I do need to wrap up and get our grades straight and hear any discussion anyone might have regarding grades or the final exam. I shouldn't say that final exam, it's just exam 5. It counts the same as the other four, about 13% of the grade. The best way, as I've been saying, going through the course is to just go steady, week to week, reading the chapters, going through the mind tap exercises that are best to be fully engaged to absorb the material and to limit then how much stress and studying you might have to do before these exams. But I tried to lay out so that uh, during the whole course that there's no heavily weighted single assessments, that it's throughout the course encouraged to just to stay steady, absorb, show your interest, and in the discussion boards, they've been uh, interesting, good comments, sharing of viewpoints, reflection on material. Tried to prompt with a variety of questions. Um, and mostly you're getting those credits going to 10% of the grade. It's really for feeling a little bit of a classroom kind of feel, even though we're distant. And these open sessions that we've had periodically, especially before exams, but every 2, 3 weeks or so, to allow in person, try to vary the nights, the evenings, so that you might have an opportunity to catch some of them through the course. Um, Next week, I'll send out something if you would care to share some reflections uh, on the experience. I'd appreciate that. Uh, Email back and forth have been, I hope, productive when someone has a problem or a situation that need an extension or a difficulty with some technical issue. Try to accommodate as best as possible. And especially some of you who have pointed out a glitch in some of the software or my opening or posting an assignment. I really appreciate that kind of being interested enough in to comment and to let me know that there's an issue and that I could follow up on. I really appreciate that. Couple of the issues I forwarded on, there were two times when uh, a shared video from another source through Cengage was was not opening. I shared that with them. Um, don't worry, of course you're not going to be responsible, but it's a shame. They look like a couple of interesting, um, uh, enriching short videos, but they haven't straightened that out. They'll probably get around to it for the next startup, but that's not helpful for you. Try to provide some extra resources for you to look into, and hopefully this course has enriched your thinking about nutrition and fitness and what you can uh, improve. We always can improve upon ourselves and others that we're near to. Um, this last exam 5, takes up at the last 2 of 3 life cycle nutrition chapters, infancy to childhood and later years. Uh, from the comments and discussion, these chapters really resonate with a lot of people, and I see why. You know, it's really gets down to specifics, a little more specifics, where we put down a foundation with the first half of the course looking at nutrients individually, seeing their importance, where we get them a bit in foods, their functions, and to a lesser extent, but just as important, some of the deficiencies associated with them. But as you've gone through this, you should realize that, like many sciences, many disciplines, we definitely don't know everything. And lots of times we don't know what we don't know. And that's certainly the case in nutrition, especially as it interfaces with medicine and things like longevity, um, and clinical aspects of things. But nutrition definitely in the last 30 years has become much more prominent in healthcare and medicine as being a major discipline that needs to be incorporated into healthcare, preventative medicine, um, and all other sorts of things, and making it more understandable for all. You know, of course, students that have it in their career path or their majors definitely uh, become more prominent. Uh, and the field of dietetics and nutrition, still strong and vibrant. Still lots of questions. Um, the um, the need um, is much greater than um, the actual career opportunities. That's my comment, that there should be more prominence in fields that have educated people in nutrition, uh, but they're a bit limited, and not appreciated as much as they should be. Hopefully that'll change and develop. So I put together here some a bit of a review, and then maybe a little more on the chapter 19. That's the last one. Haven't had a lot of time with that, so I'll talk a bit about that. That's uh, of interest also, and all of these actually, and of course the important one, nutrition and health, or disease prevention, or that chapter 18, very important. Also incorporating a lot of our earlier uh, chapters, especially chapter 9. So these are integrating chapters, as you'd expect. The last few in the course, there's one more after that, 20, which is interesting, that gets into global issues of hunger and some of the issues around distribution of nutritious food supplies and that sort of thing globally. And it's for you, if you're interested, to use the rest of time that you have the book and MindTap to explore the way you care to. So hopefully this did widen your horizons, made you more curious. Hopefully not uh, stress you more, but to realize that you're more knowledgeable, more confident in understanding uh, the importance of nutrition for yourself and others, as I said, around you. Okay. The syllabus, there we are down at the end there, 15th week we're into, and consumer concerns about foods and water is this week's topics. The grading, um, it's been always uh, a running number that you could see in Blackboard or where you stand. Most everything is up to date graded, unless there's some additional submissions that usually, even if they're uh, a bit late, get most credit if they're done reasonably well. And so 65% was for these 5 exams, MindTap 25%, and 10% for the discussion boards. The exams, hopefully you knew this, and I said it a few times, that you can explore uh, by clicking into the score to look at how you did score, what you scored on the exam. And through the course, it's been worked reasonably well with not a whole lot of issues with regard to connectivity or with the lockdown browser. I appreciate everybody being diligent on that and being patient if you had an issue, knowing that I'm going to help. I'm going to understand if there's something happened. And with regard to compliance with all the steps in lockdown browser, uh, some of us not really following as far as what we're really supposed to have. That is a decently lit surroundings, briefly show environment. So I know that sure integrity, that it's fairly that the exam is fair for everyone, and so just that's a few exceptions that when I review the snapshots, the videos and things of the test taking procedure, just be aware of that. I haven't really other than mention a few times of people being in very dark or wearing a hat or not identifying yourself. Please be compliant with that. It's for fairness for everyone in the class, and ensure integrity of the course. Any other feedback? I hope you're not haven't been shy in standing up and saying, I'd like to talk to you about something. I wrote another email, an announcement saying, look, if you have a concern about something, And or if you don't feel like I answered you sufficiently in an email, there are times that I've said, look, we could straighten this out by having a WebEx. I'm not on campus very much, just a few times over the semester. This kind of WebEx thing, I've had a few with some people try to straighten out some issues. But if you still have an issue, we're down to the last week. It's still open to scheduling something you want to talk about, whatever, your grade, or if you have a problem with something. I appreciate you talking to me about it or letting me know. Okay, because it only improves my understanding of the needs. Even though I've been teaching this course for 10 years, most of the time in person up until the last few years, we've put this course as a distance learning. I try to do my best at doing this. It's not as, um, of course, as personal and interactive, but we try to do that. Um, and what else? So that's it. So remember, if you want to review your test, you click into it. It should open up. You see how you answered it and what the expected kind of discussion was. One other comment on answering the open-ended. Again, the exam will be similar. You know, maybe there'll be 5 short answer, and those should not be answered in really short. You know, think about it, write decent sentences as much as you can, and put your thoughts together. If it says list and discuss, um, that's not list. That means put a little bit of thought into describing a bit about it. Even though to you it seems obvious by putting 2 words, you should be practicing decent writing and communication skills. That's that's a you know, that was an objective of this course to improve our communication skills as well as understanding content. As all courses have that objective in mind. Okay, so answer those questions. Look at the word if it says explain or discuss. If it just says list or identify, then you can do that very short, but a few sentences to get all of the 4 or 5 points or 6 points, whatever it's worth. Again, there'll be about 40 questions. Doesn't seem like very few people use all the time, which you are welcome to use the 100 minutes that are provided for the 40 questions. I encourage you to do that. So there really, to me, there hasn't been any discussion around not having time to finish the 30 or 35 multiple choice questions and 5 or so short answer questions in 100 minutes. As I said, very few use all the time. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about these chapters, maybe some highlights about this. Hopefully now you have this perspective of that. Wow, 40 nutrients. You could probably you should be able to recognize all of them if you see them there. You got the basic tenets of good eating, and then the compilation that is shown through the whole course, this kind of thing, where it's nice to know a little bit about all of these nutrients, these essential nutrients, meaning we don't make enough of them ourselves or don't make them at all, and essential, meaning they are necessary for normal functioning, disease prevention, and feeling good, fitness, and wellness. One thing on the wellness and fitness activities, I hope that they were also enlightening, and I hope it was understood that you did not have to, although you could have kept it longer than 3 or 4 or a week. You did not have to keep it through the whole course. you kept that amount of time and then went back to it each of the requests through MindTap to now examine this portion of your compiled um, eating, drinking, and fit and activity patterns. Um, Hopefully that got you hooked on once in a while being conscious of our um, eating pattern, our drinking pattern, our activity patterns. There are other good apps out there. One I did mention a couple of times. Uh, myfooddata.com, myfooddata.com, free. It has a premium aspect to it, but a really good app. It's pretty new and does a really nice examination of our eating pattern. It has a really expansive database that you can find items in our eating pattern. I think a bit better than the one we used in this course. There are others out there, but I encourage you to consider those. Once in a while, reflecting on your eating pattern and activity. Okay, the chapter 16 is here's just some highlights. This is from one of the study guides that's in our module for the one that includes chapter 16. And just reflecting on what the last test and the kinds of questions that were asked. Not super detailed questions. I don't expect you to remember. It's not worth that kind of investment in memorizing things like weight gain, how many weeks during pregnancy, or the milligrams of whatever calcium that are needed during the third trimester, things like that. It's more general things, and as far as the free response, well, the short essays or short answers, but rather, looking at this study guide is a good way to think about what those might be. Uh, uh, Generally, let's see, describe growth patterns of infants, and why do we use growth charts? Just to basically, what's a growth chart? If you've experienced and been through this sort of thing in real life, then you have that knowledge and you do great on that sort of question. Um, let's see, there's discussion around the value of breastfeeding and what's unique about that. Let's see what else. Food allergies and intolerances in children and allergens. Okay, so there's ways to introduce young infants to foods, and this is just a standard understanding for new parents. That is, you introduce individual food representative of classes one at a time and look for the tolerance to them. Childhood obesity. So that's a current cutting edge, well, for the last 10 to 15 years at least. And this concern about childhood obesity, what's so different about that? What's possible explanations for that? What's the concern about that for later in life? So that's infancy to childhood. There's growth spurts, and what are the nutrients that is very important there? Of course, calcium and iron, especially for young females. in developing. And just think of the nutrients and what their main roles are. The B vitamins, for the most part, energy production, coenzymes. Some of the B vitamins involved in protein metabolism, so important. Folate is especially important for things like DNA and protein synthesis, and of course the deficiency. But that was during pregnancy and issues around development of nerves and spinal cord. The disease prevention is chapter 18, and that one, whole variety of topics that integrate earlier things that we've discussed around risk factors for development of chronic diseases, such as cardiovascular, hypertension, diabetes. These are the main chronic diseases, and that's what chapter 18 discusses about. How do we track and diagnose the risk of chronic disease development? The big ones, as I just mentioned, there are cardiovascular, hypertension, and diabetes. The difference here, important, and probably a question, at least certainly like a multiple choice, and maybe an open-ended around diabetes. Difference, of course, diabetes, which we call type 1, and type 2. 1 being understood as being totally genetic and developing early or immediately at birth, versus type 2, and different mechanisms as they're understood, these two forms of diabetes. So diabetes in general, the ability to handle properly glucose levels in the blood, involving the production and the sensitivity to insulin, that hormone that is responsible for indicating to tissues to take up glucose from the blood. So the pancreas, where insulin is produced and released, is in type 1 diabetes. It's just not working. It's not producing the insulin to put out. In type 2 diabetes, it's more that insulin's put out, but the tissues are not sensitive to the hormone, not sensitive to insulin. So these are really valuable. These study guides that are in the additional resources, nicely colored like this, as I've been saying, not in the current version of the text. This was from earlier version of the test, but really excellent study guides for each chapter to go through, and you should do that for each of the ones we have for this coming exam, 18 and 19. So 19 is very much practical, really, that you can appreciate things that are in the news frequently. So very really good chapter. Sometimes I don't get to include this, but here I really wanted everyone to appreciate this. Again, details. I won't be asking something like this right here. Although it's nice to know the temperature, the danger zone for foods are what? So you could probably think logically, and if you know what what the temperatures of a refrigerator, and what is hot for food, those are the places that food are safe, refrigerated, and hot. The danger zone is something in between, right? So we don't want to be um, uh, in in a danger zone, something in between. And you could think of where does food poisoning or food contamination happen? It's when food are sitting out too long um, in um, basically room temperature, and that's the temperature that microbes, if the food is contaminated with anything, it could be airborne contamination, and could either have a food intoxication, which is we eat food that has dangerous pathogens or microbes, and then they give off toxin in our body. That's food intoxication, uh, versus food infection versus intoxication, that the microbes have produced toxins and other things in the food, and we eat that and get sick on that. So a little this PowerPoint is posted in on Blackboard. Just want to go through a little bit of it. Um, this is that again. So in this chapter, we read about and should have appreciated a little bit about food illnesses, how they can be prevented, and also practical area of minimizing nutrient loss, natural toxicants, and what's our concern, if any, about things like pesticides, food additives, what are they there for, and concerns about water. So really interesting stuff. Not a whole lot to memorize, but to review and to have in mind how you can answer some questions. Such as, let's see, government agencies, their safety standards. What's the threat? That's FDA's area. And as you might guess, who's vulnerable to foodborne illnesses? And it's those populations, pregnant women, very young, sick, older, and weakened immune systems. So here's this is one we should be ready to answer, like multiple choice questions. So what's a food infection? Okay, that's where there's live organisms on or in the food, and we've heard of these Salmonella, Listeria. We hear these from time to time in the news. Salmonella, commonly it's contaminated chicken, um, or even cooked food, or even vegetables. Listeria, sometimes vegetables carry the microbes that cause illness from ingesting of those organisms. Intoxication, those are toxins produced by microbes on the food, and we eat the food, right? Botulism is when you have a dented can that's bulging, that's dangerous because it's anaerobic, and the Clostridium microbe could have been in there producing toxins, and the bulging can is an indication of something going on, some kind of metabolism by microbes. FDA is the agency that makes standards, enforces standards around food safety. CDC is another agency that these agencies have been in the news of late because of administration looking to cut costs of government, seeing these as wastes. Most of us in the sciences and in public health don't agree with that. Certainly everywhere can be looked at and for cost savings made more efficient. So food has a long way to go lots of times from farm or other play or from an ocean to the table. It's best if it's less of this local, it's fresher and less apt to get contaminated. So that's a good answer to a question. What's a system that can improve food safety and freshness? It's developing and having local production wherever possible, or less transportation and handling. Safety in the kitchen, that's some common sense things, but just reading it once, looking at right here even is just getting the highlights of this. There's always potential for cross contamination. So, and it's I hope that parts of this course also encourage everybody to try to at least make the time to be making your own meals, putting together an inventory of food so that you can always prepare foods and take safety precautions, this kind of thing, hand washing, and avoid cross-contamination. Be aware about raw foods that could be carrying some surface bacteria that you don't want cross-contaminating something that you're not going to be cooking to kill those microbes. Okay, so cooking at proper temperatures kills microbes. Keeping things cold after cooking also reduces the risk of growth of microbes. Could be a problem. So that danger zone is shown there from 40 degrees, this is Fahrenheit, to 140. So that's the in between. So we really, and it's time factor also. So we want to keep things hot if we're cooking them, and then refrigerate them and not let them sit around, which you got to be thinking about if you're preparing food and having people and sharing stuff. You don't want to waste food or to have food cause problems the next time you try to have some of that. Eating raw things, raw foods, of course, you gotta know the source and how they were handled. And so take a risk if you don't know about the handling or where foods come from. Food safety. These are developments that over the last 50 years or so have, with technology and reduction of costs, have improved a lot. Things like radiation of foods, and we shouldn't be afraid of that. That's just providing some controlled energy to kill excess microbes, like microwaves. If things are working right, they do do a fantastic job without sacrificing other qualities of food. Okay, so one advance there talking about irradiation. Uh, Ultra processed food. That's definitely be a question that to write about there. What's the issue with ultra processed foods? Ultra processed foods are those that a lot of the nutrients have been processed out, have been oxidized or leached, or really not left with the nutritional value before. Like raw fruit, or raw vegetables that maintain the quality and the nutrition of how they were grown versus uh, processed uh, ultra processed foods. You could think of a lot of things that we might get warmed up um, at certain restaurants or uh, um, fast food. Fast food. Let me get that. Shabir, you said microwave. Can they kill? Where'd that go? I just saw the chat flash. Now where the heck did it go? Can they kill surface organisms? Can microwave kill surface organisms? Um, so I don't know about the whole spectrum of organisms, but definitely that irradiation heats up the surface, and it depends on uh, I think it depends on the organism, their tolerance level. So I don't know exactly the whole for all microbes, but that's a great question. Um, and I'm sure there was lots of work done to understand that. But I would say for the most part, it definitely would microwaving, heating up the surface of food is going to be, as long as it's a moist food, because that's how a microwave works, of course. It vibrates moisture, it vibrates water to create the heat. If it's a dry surface, it might not be as effective as for killing organisms. That's a interesting thought there. And compared to um, heating time. So FDA, USDA, and MyPlate. So these are government released kind of guidances, or have, I mean, agencies, or in the case of MyPlate, guidelines for practice for the public. But FDA and USDA have wonderful websites, at least have had websites for people to get a whole lot of information, and nicely presented also. Learning how to cook and store vegetables without much nutrient loss, really important skill to have. Not that hard, just takes a little thinking and preparation. Frozen food, which was a wonderful invention back in the late 50s into 60s. Bird's Eye is still around. The food company came up with ways to rapidly freeze vegetables to maintain their integrity with um, sort of like some of it is dry ice and uh, um, rolling across things that are extremely cold to freeze them very quickly. And a lot of food science there. So, microwave and steaming could decrease certain nutrients. Um, uh, decreased, it decreases losses compared to boiling. Okay, ultra processed food is just a little bit more review. Ultra processed food, this is lots of convenience food. Confections, that is candies and cookies and things that are flavorful for the moment, but they're not nutritional. They're fun foods. We're certainly like to enjoy fun foods, but not as staples and expecting that to be nutritious. They're um, those calories that we have for extra kind of enjoying the moment with tea or coffee, whatever. Yeah, the ultra processed is appealing to consumers and for convenience and flavor. And the FDA and USDA try to communicate many of these things. My plate is an example. Said that already. What about environmental concerns of unintended um, toxins that could get into food, um, and food chain. So food chains are larger species that we may collect for food from the ocean have a greater possibility of this thing called bioaccumulation of whatever contaminants might be in a given area. The notable one is mercury that might be in uh, oh, wish I knew where my and see where the okay. Let's see. Okay, you're let's see. Decrease nutrient. Okay. So the comment there are decreased nutrients included at the back nutrient label. Okay, let's see. So decreased nutrients as such as when we prepare it and decrease it. That's a great kind of thought. Um, no, it's not going to be on the label. So on the label, they're going to have the best kind of reflection of what the food is, right? They want to sell us on, okay, this tuna fish has this much protein, has these kinds of minerals and vitamins. Um, if you tuna fish is not a great example because we're not going to do a whole lot with tuna fish. Well, we could whatever. Let's so if we say any kind of canned vegetable, okay, so it is as it is, and if we take it out of the can and boil the heck out of it, or steam it too long, that's on us decreasing the nutritional value. That's right. So maybe a little warning on the label if it's not all known that hey, overcooking your food, this food in this can or package, you're gonna decrease. You're not gonna get what's on the label. That's good. That's an insightful kind of question. And so these are things that people may not be thoughtful about. Uh, that's a good question. Uh, so the idea of bioaccumulating. So if we're eating or catch a large fish, we should keep in mind how safe are these waters. were there a whole lot of methylmercury that accumulated, and this fish ate a bunch of these fish that had whatever kind of toxicant, and mercury's the one that's most of the time noted. It could be lead, or it could be chromium if there's a spill, or if there was mining somewhere around, um, or if or if there was a sunk ship of some type that had been carrying this cargo that contaminated the area. Yeah, it's something to be aware of. And uh, so the idea also here, to avoid this kind of thing, the suggestion is to not have a diet that's solely based on one type of food, and in particular, maybe one type of fish, or how often do we eat fish or seafood. It's recommended now, that's a healthy kind of meat, protein, fish and seafood. However, recommendation usually um, is not every day, of course, but maybe 2 times a week, maybe three, and also know the quality. I know for pregnant women, it's suggested to really be aware of that, and maybe just have fish or seafood once a week or twice a week. Um, arsenic used to be a part of pesticides that we used. It could arsenic, of course, is an element, so it is not going anywhere. It's not degrading. It may move around a bit, but it still could be around. So we don't hear a whole lot about arsenic poisoning, but it was something amazing that it was used as a pesticide. Um, it was, I guess, effective, and it might still be used in some rodenticides to kill rodents. Okay, so here's discuss mercury level in seafoods and why it's important, and minimize your consumption of mercury. So the risk of mercury is it's a brain toxicant. It also replaces some of our uh, um, some of our elements that are closely related. It could affect bones. But natural toxicants is just to be aware of these. Uh, certain kinds of vegetables. These are monitored in some ways. One that is probably more uh, common is this solanine. If we have very old potatoes at a farm or in a basement or sitting around, if they're sprouting, um, this is a natural compound that when potatoes are sprouting a lot, this is just produced, and it's a toxicant that should be aware of. So we shouldn't really eat overly sprouting potatoes. Okay, so no, sometimes things that are natural aren't necessarily safe, exactly safe. So there are natural things that are also harmful. Pesticides, we know that there is a place for pesticides. I used to be in R&D um, in pesticide development. I did the environmental and metabolism profile of certain pesticides or compounds that were trying to be developed into a pesticide to target a certain pest. Yes, they are a necessary kind of thing to produce enough uh, food for population and to keep cost reasonable. Pesticides, to some extent, are necessary, but they are improving to certainly reduce any of the residual um, residues in the environment. Most are uh, not not extremely toxic to off-target pests, um, and they go through a lot of studies to prove that. But there still could be uh, pesticide spills or something on a farm, or misuse of pesticides by farmers, and to have more residues on crops than expected, because the way that pesticides are regulated is knowing their potential toxic effect on or accumulation in food under normal use. So if the use isn't normal, if for some reason a farmer makes a mistake or over applies, then that may not be known or caught. So there's always a hazard there. Um, FDA to some extent is does monitoring, but also EPA, Environmental Protection Agency, who kind of license use of pesticides, also monitors. FDA is on the checking once in a while, doing checks in food, how much pesticide residue is there, and is it um, below the tolerance level that we can safely um, tolerate in food. Modern farming is trying to reduce use of pesticide. That reduces their costs, but ways to do that are being developed, such as patterns of growing crops together, or this idea of um, having certain crops that are grown within other crops that tend to inhibit certain pests that whatever chew on leaves or destroy roots and that kind of thing. So the modern agriculture, and also applications of pesticides more precise now with new technology. So what about organically grown crops, organic food? Uh, so organic food, that's it's not completely no pesticides. The pesticides that are approved that are more like natural products, like soaps and gums or waxes that inhibit um, pests from destroying crops. The term organic crops applies to meet the definition for how, if it's livestock, how they're grazed, the feed that they get, and their amounts of, if any, hormones and antibiotics that are given. They're not great differences between conventional and organic foods. Um, a lot of it is how you feel about um, farmers. You want to support a farmer who uses new kind of rotational crop techniques and limits the amount of chemical pesticide. But it's not been shown to date an important risk difference between crops that are grown conventionally and under organic practices. About food additives, what are they for? Um, Food additives meet these requirements that they're generally recognized as safe, and what they're for, and and there's a big margin of safety, 100 to 1,000 times of any risk. Some additives can be considered these intentional food additives, things like some amount of salt and sugar and nitrates, nitrites that inhibit spoilage, and that's usually microbial spoilage. And here's a list of things that you could most times see on labels if they're added to packaged foods at least, that inhibit this kind of spoilage, whether it's physical spoilage, oxidation, like these are antioxidants here. They inhibit, most of the time it's any kinds of oils and fats that could go rancid by exposure to oxygen. So these inhibit that. Some additives are for color. For instance, margarine. Margarine is doesn't have that natural butter color, so an additive is added to make it that yellowish. Okay, these others, sweeteners, obviously here. So it's a good thing to have in mind for the test. What are some additives to food and why are they added? So just at the top of your head, think of some added for antimicrobial, maybe some for antioxidant, the BHT or vitamin C for antioxidant type things, and okay. Others might be to stabilize some food. Commonly, mayonnaise. So mayonnaise is a mixture of, um, depending on, but basically it's vinegar, uh, vinegar and oil, which usually we know salad dressing, doesn't stay mixed. But for mayonnaise, those two are made so they're homogeneous. And most of the time, the secret ingredient is egg yolk, pasteurized egg yolk, and when that's added, and it keeps its stability, the vinegar and oil. There's other flavors, of course, in mayonnaise, depending on the what mayonnaise you get there. But so those are emulsifiers, additives. Indirect, those are additives that are formed. Acrylamide is, and this is potentially a hazardous compound that's formed high temperature, um, high temperature carbohydrate and sugar forms these compounds. So you might think of what could be high temperature carbohydrate and sugar, um, or the amino acid asparagine. So some kind of protein or sugar and carbohydrate making a different compound that's usually very small amounts, but if it's large, if there's a certain kind of cooking could form these, like potato chips that are maybe overdone, over fried, burnt potatoes with oil, French fries, and certain cookies. So you don't want to eat a lot of burnt kind of food. It's usually we're not attracted to it, but sometimes we eat it, but have in mind there's something that's not good that's formed in burnt parts of food. Packaging, another indirect uh, additive to food. And other processing, like decaffeinated coffee, potential a little bit of the solvent that was used to extract the caffeine might be there. This, if you're a chemist, you recognize methylene chloride. It's an important solvent in the lab. We don't really want it in coffee, but I guess if coffee is not made, decaffeinated coffee is not made well, could have residual of this solvent that we really don't want to be drinking. Others, indirect additives. Finally, about water. So this is the last discussion question in the course is asking us about what's our thought on water, how safe is our water, we have any concerns about water. Be interesting to see what we all think about that. How do we know what the safety is of our water? Where do we get our water even? So water is fresh water is a precious thing. It's less than a percent of the water on the globe. We know that most of the globe is water, covered with 70% of the Earth's surface is covered with seawater. And the water that's potable or drinkable is a couple of percent of all the water. And not all that is accessible to us for drinking. A lot of that fresh water is as glaciers at the poles and other certain parts of the world, and they're all part of this water cycle that keeps fresh water moving around. We have a lot of water processing plants, obviously, but fresh water is not something to be taken lightly. Many parts of the world struggle to have potable or fresh water. Some of it surface water. The largest masses of fresh water are right here between the U.S. and Canada, the Great Lakes. A lot of fresh water also is groundwater. There's several states that rely a lot on groundwater, like Florida and some of the, especially Florida, very dependent on groundwater. So maintenance of that and keep it protected is really important. Public water works is an underappreciated resource. Yes, we pay our water bills, but that quality of water is probably taken for granted. What about bottled water? There's very little regulation on bottled water, and it's kind of left to the companies to maintain their quality and to be honest, aware the source of the water, how they handle it. So it's a question. Water has been in the news a lot lately from lead in water, and potential other potential effects of other contaminants. What about tap water versus bottled water? Do you taste the difference? Is it psychological? Where do we get our water? What do we think about using bottled plastic water? I would love to have good water systems, and everybody have their own bottle they carry around, right? One of their choice, kind of reusable bottle, and they have a good water fountain that has a purifier on it. They're becoming more common. They're not cheap and they take a little maintenance, but it's something that should be everywhere. Okay, so to summarize this chapter, a lot of interesting stuff, a few things to memorize and be ready to answer by just reading the chapter and looking at the those reviews, the study guides should be sufficient. I know there wasn't a whole lot of time to digest this chapter, and but there will be certainly a couple of short answer questions there, and some not real detailed multiple choice ones, but of the key things that we kind of just run over a bunch of them. That there's natural toxins, there are unintended additives, there's intended additives to protect the safety or the longevity of food, nutritional um, integrity of them. So that's a few other review things to go back to chapter 18. 18 stresses some things around nutrition and health. And we started out in the first and second chapter noting this, that of the 10 leading recognized causes of death in this country are up there, and the reds are related to some connection, correlation, and maybe some really hardcore connections with diet, heart disease, cancer, strokes, and diabetes. Those definitely have connections, correlations, and sometimes really solid evidence. Why we stop from saying absolutely cause and effect is because clinical trials, it's hard to, with humans, it's hard to make solid connections between our diet and well, foods and our eating pattern and these diseases, because we're all complicated species, and it's hard to control us in studies, and we're not going to introduce something that will cause us to have stroke, obviously. It's done on test animals, but they don't always extrapolate completely to humans. That's the idea of animal studies, lab studies, and true clinical studies. But lots of correlations between these, so the importance important to them. Yeah, the 10 leading the cause of deaths, and how do we offset that? And we might not be doing a great job because it hasn't been improving too much over the last 25 years or so, even though there's more information around, there's easier ways to get information out, but it's not been sticking for the most part. It hasn't been reversing this idea that we do have an epidemic of certain chronic diseases, things like diabetes and heart disease hasn't declined, and obesity, and some of these chronic diseases. Certainly, genetics have an effect, and maybe things like the food supply and fresh food availability is an issue in lots of places. And this is discussed in chapter 18, this connection among these diseases, the relationship among chronic diseases, sometimes called the metabolic syndrome, where there's this connectivity. It might be that first it's recognized as obesity or uncontrolled weight gain, leading to type 2 diabetes, atherosclerosis, high blood pressure, and a vicious cycle that that is not completely understood. There's some hope in reversing some of this, at least temporarily, with some of the new drugs that are available that are being evaluated and some on the market. These GLP-1, so they're regulators that regulate appetite and leptin and ghrelin and this sort of thing. So there's real an additional intervention arm to combat and to understand metabolic syndrome, which is very prominent. Okay, hypertension, Hypertension, we should immediately think of, okay, if we're thinking about eating pattern, that's um, a more plant-based eating pattern, less less say sodium-containing foods, and more toward plant-based diet is a recommendation currently. There's just some details there on the screen. Blood pressure. Uh, these are recommendations and alerts around hypertension. So I also in the chapter mentioned about in chapter 18, that is um, diagnosis for diabetes. And uh, it's more common that a physician does these kind of things, tries to assess the risk of this earlier with his patients. This A1's fasting A1C, this basically gives physicians um, a a pulse of what the glucose level has been in an individual for some time, something like 3 or 4 months, because the glucose reacts with a certain surface protein on red blood cells, and that's this A1C measurement, and that's an indication of how much are we controlling our glucose in the blood. The high glucose in the blood for a long time creates inflammation and other kinds of complications, like formation of plaque and leading to atherosclerosis, um, for one. Okay, complications of diabetes. I just mentioned a little bit there. Uh, so this is kind of an underused kind of really nice kind of presentation. Once in a while, it gets communicated. I really probably should do better. Excuse me. Um, I was on campus in March. That was for National Nutrition Month, and it was with the Student Life Center. We had a lunchtime discussion presentation kind of thing, a bunch of giveaways. Some students were aware of it and came. This was what was this, March 13th, I think. Um, and it was publicized. We tried to get students. We did get a handful on and off over the 2 hours we were there. But we talked about this kind of thing, awareness, and how important knowing at least a basic amount of the importance of nutrition for all of us. Okay, healthy eating plate. It added to my plate by emphasizing staying active, so the stay active symbol, and also hydration. Okay. Some I had some to wrap up. I got some questions here, some example questions from the first chapter 16, and maybe a little from 17. Just some example questions. Probably some of these will be also on the test. So good. Uh, let's see. This one. So this is maybe this is a little earlier one. Pregnancy. We had some of these maybe in the last test. Yes, it's a transfer of umbilical cord, not a big. What about BMI? We should be aware of these BMI numbers a little bit. And where It's fun to know you can calculate your BMI, of course. All you need to know is your weight and height, and there's a formula there that you know your BMI. And you can see where are you in the range. Optimal is something like 22, 23, and then above that gets into either underweight. This one right here is underweight, below 18.5 BMI. Going beyond 25, 26, 28, 30 gets into overweight and obesity. Baby is affected by gestational diabetes in all these ways except so it's not necessarily the case that a fetus is likely to have diabetes uh, if uh, if the mother has gestational diabetes. Maternal calcium, well, this was a pregnancy question. I think this is on the last test. So, fortunately, that pregnant women have have a double the absorption of calcium as non-pregnant women, so they don't have to take in more excessive calcium. So the absorption doubles, meaning that women don't have to consume more. Anemia, to prevent anemia, you should think of iron for sure, folic acid also. Okay, sorry, these were some of these are pregnancy. We could skip over the pregnancy ones. That's because we're looking for, well, this one. Current recommendations for solid food for infant. And again, I said I wouldn't ask for numbers like this, so something like this won't be on the test. Honey. So honey is a weird thing, but usually you think of it's noted because honey sounds like a natural, really healthy thing, but it's not recommended for the very young, because there's a chance that there's a small amount of botulinum toxin in the honey, and that's produced by certain organisms, soil organism, Clostridium botulinum, that under anaerobic conditions, and that's what a jar of honey usually is, anaerobic. It could produce some of this toxin, and most of us can handle a little bit of certain toxins because we have built up our detoxification system enough that can recognize a invader or something called a xenobiotic and get rid of it before it causes problems, but not when you're very young. Um, Although very low birth weight infants have an increased risk of early death, low birth weight infants have the same risk as normal weight infants. So that's false because there is a difference that very low weight versus low weight. There's a cutoff that um, just uh, at a certain weight, we don't have the blood flow, don't have the systems that defend against just normal exposures to the environment. So that's the calcium question. Calcium much better absorbed in pregnant women. Uh, So again, this was don't worry about this. That was a question that was on last test about um, should pregnant women stop exercising and why? Would you say that's not not advisable to not be? Children's energy and protein requirements are generally what as they age. So protein and energy as children generally do what? They increase, then decrease in adolescence. So there's a growth spurt period uh, where adolescence, if we consider adolescence um, after 17, 18. So protein and energy increase and then decrease. And what's going on during those periods? Well, of course, it's fast growth period, especially for bones, innervation, brain. So thought is a combination of factors around childhood obesity. One of them uh, could be just not as active because of modern day distractions that are available and might not be controlled well. Lead toxicity, more um, common in low-income children because lead is found in paints, walls, homes. It's easily absorbable from the stomach. Yes, this was just in the news the last few days, where there's still places in the country that um, there's still a significant amount of old paint that's still kind of not taken care of, removed, and because we know it's an issue that could be uh, exposure to children to not supervised properly or uh, the paint chips and things removed from the environment. Let's see, adults have higher energy needs than teens. Let's see, is that the case? No, that's not true. In fact, yes, as we age, uh, yeah, things slow down. Muscle is harder to keep up, and um, suppose that's kind of just in general aging. It's seen to be you don't need as much energy, but of course we want to fight against that and try to keep up our energy and activity. Teenagers tend to have adequate calcium intakes, and this can what? So teenagers tend to have inadequate intakes, and this can, well, it's not good. Um, and osteoporosis is a long-term um, journey of bones not being sufficiently turned over and having the nutrients that they need, and calcium is a big one, also protein and phosphorus. Uh, to boost energy intake, a thin crust veggie pizza is a good choice for teens at a fast food restaurant. Well, if you're there are better choices than others at even at fast food restaurants. So that's thin crust, meaning the ratio of vegetable to carbohydrate. I mean, carbohydrate, at least from the crust of pizza, is higher with higher veggie content. All right, adults in this age, 31 to 70. Okay, 31 to 70. That's a bracket that we read in the chapter. It goes from adolescence or to young adult, and this is kind of the middle stages compared to those at 71 and older. It's the older category. Have a greater risk of which deficiency? So we think of eating pattern, what changes in an eating pattern, and it's oftentimes, for whatever reason, lack of D, dairy. It's a big one, and maybe it's avoiding sunlight, but of those older adults are at risk for malnutrition due to the following, except, let's see, physical changes that occur, increased muscle, psychological, economic factors. So malnutrition. So it'll be all the other ones except this, because that doesn't necessarily happen. In fact, it usually goes the other way for most older adults, decreasing. Older adults can meet their nutrient needs following the same MyPlate guidelines as the 30-year-old. So no, there's special needs for optimizing health for older adults, and they would include those things that would keep up muscle building, keep up bone, keep up vision. It's vitamin A. So D, A, and iron. The dietary guidelines suggest adults choose not to drink or drink in moderation. Is that true or false? Okay, that's true. There's a lot of debate in the newest guidelines around this kind of thing. Should they say absolutely it's recommended no drinking, meaning drink alcoholic beverages, not drinking, just anything. Fatty liver disease occurs in people who drink heavily because alcohol metabolism leads to increased fat synthesis. Okay, so that's true. That's where the liver accumulates this alcohol, tries to metabolize it fast, but when it's overwhelmed, then that alcohol gets deposited as fat, because our body wants to get rid of alcohol or to metabolize it, because it's recognized as a kind of a toxin. There's some evidence that some amount of alcoholic beverages are beneficial. It's certainly not because of the alcohol, it's because of the other phytochemicals in the drink. Okay, so this is a growth chart, and to know about a growth chart, there'll probably be at least one question about relating to it. May not be a picture exactly like this. So based on, and it's really just looking at a 10-year-old boy, BMI of 21. Right, so we look for that, and which category is he in. So we're just going like this. It's over here, and then we recognize that what is this right here? 95th, between 85 and 95th percentile, and what is that? Then we should know that that is overweight. So up here is just on a growth chart is if we're in this region, it's obese, it's overweight. healthy weight and underweight. Not a symptom of alcohol toxicity is impaired. So the point is here, all the others are a symptom of alcohol toxicity, impaired physical, mental, and muscle control. Moderate alcohol intake can increase HDL, high density lipoprotein. So that's the good cholesterol containing molecule that's around, and there's a little bit of evidence saying that moderate alcohol intake could have a positive effect on HDL. HDL is as I said there, the good lipoprotein that collects cholesterol from excess cholesterol that may be lingering around the bloodstream and brings it back to the liver. All right, back to this original question that we said early on in the course: is 40 indispensable uh, nutrients in the diet? For sure, I'm going to have this just to make sure everybody was listening through the course. This question we should know. What does that mean, 40? Okay, that means there's quite a bit of essential uh, nutrients that we need to be cognizant that we get regularly in a balanced intake of food and drink. 40. And so that's a bit of questions from the last for just to be thinking about the last few chapters that we have. And I hope that this was a decent review, comments and things, and allow us to uh, to to have some questions, opportunity to discuss. Again, reminding you, as I had the initial kind of dialogue there, saying that we have a very short time left in the course. If you do have comments and questions, please let me know. And there's a whole lot that that when you reflect on, what you may have learned in the course, either from the content or listening to me, or being self-aware and looking into things and wondering about questions, and in the discussions being thoughtful and making comments, that this was not just, the course was not just to satisfy an academic requirement, but to really, it's life stuff that is enhancing to not just yourself but others around you. And appreciate your attention, and I hope you do well in the final week here and whatever other courses that you're finishing up. And just I'm open to always contact me. I did put an advertisement out back a while ago that if someone's interested in and is going to be in studies here at RCBC for another year or two, or a year, that if you're interested in doing an independent study project, I do have one approved. There is a 1 credit and then a follow-up, a 2 credit, and I have some ideas what that research would be on campus. And it's focused on, broadly, it would be looking at eating patterns and the knowledge of student body at RCBC as a snapshot of a college community. And it's a nice kind of training exercise to do a bit of research with the possibility of, well, certainly presenting somewhere, and maybe even writing up something and getting it published somewhere in a student journal or something like that. But it's something nice to talk about if you think it's something that is valuable, and it could be in your career path. And that's called SRS, that's Student Research. And well, you can email me with if you have questions, you want to learn more about that. And so I'm gonna stop the recording here.